Two children were crying in a crowded restaurant. Not because they were hurt, not because they were hungry, but because nobody, not a single person in their entire 7 years of life, had ever truly heard them speak. Their own father couldn't understand the words their hands were screaming. Until one waitress looked down, saw what everyone else had missed, and did something that would change their lives forever. This is a story about the loudest silence you've never heard, and how one moment of bravery can break through years of loneliness. Stay with me, because what happens next will restore your faith in the power of human connection. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. Let me tell you a story about 3 people whose lives changed in a single moment. It happened in London, in one of those fancy restaurants where the silverware costs more than most people's monthly rent. Picture this. A successful hotel owner named Daniel Reed sat at his usual corner table. At 33 years old, he owned a chain of luxury hotels across Europe. Money wasn't his problem. Power wasn't his problem. But sitting across from his 7-year-old twins, he felt more helpless than he'd ever felt in his life. His children, Oliver and Sophie, were deaf, and Daniel didn't know how to talk to them. Oliver played with his untouched food, his little hands making gestures that his father couldn't understand. Sophie pressed herself against the leather seat, tears running down her cheeks, watching the world move around her in a language she couldn't hear. The nanny beside them, Mrs. Harrison, just sat there with a cold expression, treating the children's attempts to communicate like they were being naughty. That's when everything changed. A young woman named Aria Santos was working that night. She was 28, a waitress trying to make ends meet in an expensive city. As she refilled water glasses, moving invisible among the wealthy customers, she saw something that stopped her heart. 2 beautiful children desperately trying to speak, and nobody was listening. Aria didn't think about the consequences. She didn't worry about the powerful man who might get angry. She just set down her water pitcher and did something simple. She signed. Her hands moved in flowing patterns, speaking without words. The change in those children was instant. Oliver's eyes went wide with surprise. Sophie stopped crying immediately, her whole face lighting up like someone had turned on the sun. In that restaurant full of noise and chatter, these 2 silent children had finally found someone who could hear them. "Hello, little ones," Aria signed. "What are your names?" Daniel Reed's fork fell from his hand, clattering against the plate. In 7 years of being a father, he had never seen his children react to anyone like this. Oliver's hands flew excitedly as he responded. Sophie actually giggled, something her father hadn't heard in months. "I'm Oliver," the boy signed with enthusiasm. "This is my sister, Sophie. Can you really understand us? Nobody else ever does." Aria felt her heart break a little. She knelt beside their table, ignoring the shocked stares around her. "I can understand you perfectly, sweetheart. Why is everyone always angry at us?" Sophie's small hands moved hesitantly. "We try so hard to be good." That question hit Aria like a punch. She looked up at Daniel, seeing him not as some powerful businessman, but as a lost father watching his children come alive for the first time. What did she ask? Daniel's voice was rough, barely steady. Aria hesitated. She was just a waitress, and he was Daniel Reed. But looking at these children, she found her courage. She asked why everyone is always angry at them. They think they're being bad when they're just trying to talk. Daniel's jaw tightened. Mrs. Harrison shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Reed, I've been trying to teach them proper behavior." "Proper behavior?" Aria's voice carried more emotion than she intended. "They're 7 years old, trying to talk to their father. There's nothing wrong about that." The restaurant went silent. Every eye turned to the young waitress who had just challenged one of London's wealthiest men. Aria realized her mistake too late. She started to stand, to apologize, to disappear. But Daniel's hand caught her wrist. Not hard, not threatening, but urgent. "Don't," he said quietly. "Don't stop talking to them." Oliver tugged on Aria's apron, his hands moving rapidly. "Please don't leave. Nobody ever talks to us like this. Daddy tries, but he doesn't know how." Sophie signed something that made Aria's eyes fill with tears. "Are you going to leave us too?" "Everyone always leaves." "I'm not going anywhere right now," Aria signed back. Then she looked at Daniel. "They want to tell you about their day." Oliver learned a new word in reading class. Sophie drew a picture of a butterfly. Daniel stared at her like she'd just spoken a foreign language. They want to tell me about their day?" "They always want to tell you about their day," Aria said gently. "They just haven't had anyone to help them." For a moment, this powerful man looked completely lost. Then something shifted in his expression. "Mrs. Harrison," he said without looking at the nanny, "you're dismissed. Permanently." The woman sputtered, but Daniel wasn't listening. His eyes were on his children, who were chattering excitedly in sign language, their faces more animated than they'd been in months. "What's your name?" he asked Arya. "Arya Santos." "Arya." He said it carefully, like he was testing how it felt. "How do you know sign language?" The question she'd been dreading. Arya's throat tightened. "I learned it from my little brother. He was deaf. He died 7 years ago." The words came out flat. It was the only way she could say them without breaking. Daniel's expression softened. "I'm sorry." Sophie tugged on Arya's sleeve, signing something that made her smile despite the painful memories. "She wants to know if you'll teach her daddy how to talk with his hands," Arya translated. "Would you?" The question came out rougher than Daniel intended. "Teach me." Arya looked at him, really looked. Beneath the expensive suit and powerful reputation, she saw a man who loved his children desperately, but had no idea how to reach them. "It's not easy," she warned. "It takes time and patience. I have both when it comes to my children." Against every instinct telling her to run, Arya found herself nodding. "Okay, I can teach you." And that's how it started. A chance meeting in a crowded restaurant. A waitress who knew how to listen. A father desperate to connect. And 2 children who just wanted to be heard. None of them knew it yet, but their lives would never be the same. The next morning, Arya woke up in Daniel Reed's guest room, temporarily disoriented. The room was bigger than her entire apartment. Sunlight streamed through massive windows overlooking gardens that looked like something from a magazine. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. She expected a housekeeper, but Daniel himself appeared in the doorway, carrying a breakfast tray. He'd changed from his business suit into jeans and a simple sweater. His dark hair was slightly messy, and in the morning light, he looked less like an intimidating businessman and more like a tired father who'd been up all night thinking. "I thought you might be hungry," he said, setting the tray down. "The children are still sleeping, but they're usually up by 8. Arya glanced at the clock. 7:30 in the morning. "You didn't have to bring me breakfast." "I wanted to talk to you," he said, moving to the window. "About yesterday. About what happens next." Arya sat up, suddenly aware she was wearing an oversized t-shirt and her hair was a mess. "What do you mean?" Daniel turned to face her, his blue eyes studying her carefully. "My children haven't smiled in months. Yesterday, they couldn't stop laughing. They slept through the night without nightmares for the first time in weeks." He paused. "I need you to stay. Stay. Move in. Become their teacher, their caregiver, their voice. I'll pay you more than you can imagine. You'll have your own space, complete privacy, everything you need. And in return, you give them what I can't." His voice cracked slightly. "Understanding. Connection. Love." Arya stared at him, seeing the desperation he was trying to hide. "This isn't just about the children, is it?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "What do you mean?" "You're scared. Not of business rivals or financial problems. You're scared of your own children because you don't know how to reach them." The accuracy of her words hit him hard. "Is that so wrong? They're the most important people in my world, and I'm failing them every single day." "You're not failing them. You're just lost." Arya's voice softened. "But hiring me to fix your relationship isn't the answer. You have to do the work yourself. Then help me do the work." It wasn't a command. It was a plea. Arya thought of Oliver's excited hands telling stories nobody understood. Of Sophie's tears when she thought nobody was listening. "I can't live here permanently," she said finally. "But I can help you learn sign language. Really learn it. And I can work with the children, help them understand that being deaf isn't something to be ashamed of." "What do you need?" "Time, patience, and a promise that you won't give up when it gets hard." Daniel stepped closer. "I don't give up on things that matter to me." The intensity in his voice made her shiver. A crash from downstairs broke the moment, followed by excited voices. Daniel immediately tensed, but Arya smiled. "That's just the children. They found Oliver and Sophie in the kitchen, covered in flour, attempting to make pancakes with the confused help of Maria, the housekeeper. Both children froze when they saw their father, their expressions shifting from joy to worry. "We wanted to make breakfast for Arya," Sophie signed hesitantly. "Are we in trouble?" Daniel looked helplessly at Arya, who translated with a gentle smile. "Tell them they're not in trouble," Arya said. "Tell them next time to ask Maria for help before they start cooking." As Daniel repeated her words aloud, Arya signed the translation. Both children's faces lit up with relief and excitement. "Daddy, are you learning our language?" Oliver signed eagerly. "He's trying," Arya translated. "This is your first lesson. Watch my hands carefully." She signed slowly, clearly. "I am learning your language because I love you." Daniel watched intently, then attempted to copy her movements. His hands were large, less graceful than hers, but he managed something recognizable. The children's reaction was immediate. They launched themselves at him with squeals of delight, covering his flower-covered clothes with sticky hugs. "Again, Daddy," Sophie said aloud, her voice slightly unclear but strong. "Say it again." Daniel looked surprised. She spoke. "Many deaf children can speak," Arya explained, "especially if they had some hearing before they lost it. But they often don't because they can't hear themselves. When she's excited, she forgets to be self-conscious." Daniel knelt to his daughter's level and signed the phrase again, more confidently this time. Sophie clapped her hands. "I love you too, Daddy." The words, imperfect but heartfelt, broke something open in Daniel's chest. He pulled both children close, holding them tight as emotions he'd kept locked away for years threatened to overwhelm him. Arya watched the scene with tears in her eyes, thinking of her brother Miguel and all the moments like this they'd never have. But instead of the usual crushing grief, she felt something different. Hope, maybe. Purpose. "Arya." Daniel's voice was rough when he looked up at her. "Stay. Please. Not as an employee. As family." The word hung in the air between them. Arya looked at the children, who were watching her with identical expressions of hope. Then at Daniel, whose blue eyes held a vulnerability that took her breath away. "I'll stay," she said quietly. "For them." But even as she said it, Arya knew she was lying to herself. She was staying for him too. For this broken man who loved his children desperately, but didn't know how to show it. For the way his eyes softened when he looked at them, the way his voice gentled when he spoke their names. She was staying because Daniel Reed was nothing like the cold businessman she'd expected. And that terrified her more than anything else. As the children pulled her into their flower-covered hug, Arya realized she'd just made a decision that would change everything. And there was no going back. 3 weeks passed like a beautiful dream. Daniel was learning sign language faster than Arya expected. Every evening after work, he'd sit with her and the children, practicing until his hands ached. Oliver and Sophie blossomed under the attention, their confidence growing daily. But dreams don't last forever, especially in Daniel Reed's world. It started with a phone call that made Daniel's face go hard and cold. Arya was reading to the children when she heard his voice from downstairs, harsh and angry in a way she'd never heard before. "Tell Victor the First don't negotiate with threats. And tell him to stay away from my family." Victor. Arya had heard whispers about Viktor Kozlov at the restaurant where she used to work. A Russian businessman who owned half the nightclubs in London and ran them like his personal empire. A man who saw family as weakness and loyalty as something to be bought. That night, after the children were asleep, Daniel came to find her. He looked exhausted, worry lines deep around his eyes. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. "About my business. About the kind of man I am. You don't have to." "Yes, I do." He sat down heavily. "I'm not just a hotel owner, Arya. I mean, I am, but that's not all. I control security contracts, private real estate deals, things that aren't always completely legal. I've made enemies. Powerful ones." Arya's heart sank, but she wasn't entirely surprised. "Viktor Kozlov? You know him?" "I know of him. Everyone does." She paused. "Is he threatening you?" "He's threatening my children." Daniel's voice was flat, controlled, but Arya could hear the fear underneath. "He wants me to sign over 3 of my hotels. If I don't, he's promised to hurt what matters most to me. The children. And you." The words hung in the air. Arya realized that somehow, in 3 short weeks, she'd become part of what Daniel protected. Part of what he cared about. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to protect my family." His blue eyes met hers. "All of my family." The next morning, Arya woke to the sound of cars in the driveway. Not the usual quiet arrival of Daniel's staff, but the aggressive rumble of multiple engines. She went to the window and her blood ran cold. Black SUVs surrounded the house. Men in dark suits were positioning themselves around the property. Arya ran to the children's rooms. Oliver and Sophie were still sleeping peacefully, unaware of the danger outside. She gently shook them awake. "Listen to me carefully," she signed. "We need to play a quiet game right now. Stay close to me and do exactly what I say. The fear in her hands must have shown because both children nodded seriously, their eyes wide. Downstairs, Arya could hear voices. Daniel's, calm and controlled. And another voice, heavily accented and cruel. You've become soft, Reed. Weak. This is what happens when a man cares about something. It makes him vulnerable. Get out of my house, Victor. Not until you sign the contracts. Or perhaps I should have a conversation with your children. I'm sure they'd be very persuasive. Arya's heart hammered. She looked around Oliver's room desperately, trying to think. The panic room. Daniel had mentioned it once, behind the bookshelf in his office downstairs. She signed quickly to the children. We're going to go downstairs very quietly. If I tell you to run, you go to your father's office and hide. Understand? Both children nodded, fear clear on their faces but trust in their eyes. They made it halfway down the stairs when Arya heard gunshots. Not many, just 2 sharp cracks that made her freeze. Then silence, which was somehow worse. She pushed the children behind her, her mind racing. Then she made a decision that she'd question for the rest of her life. Stepping into view with both children behind her, Arya called out, "Mr. Kozlov, I think you're looking for us." Every head turned toward her. Daniel's face went white with fury and terror. "Arya, get them out of here. Now!" "I'm afraid she can't do that," Kozlov said, his dead eyes lighting up with satisfaction. "Bring them here, girl." Arya's hands moved behind her back, signing rapidly. "When I say run, you go to the panic room. Don't look back. Don't wait for me. We won't leave you," Sophie signed back. "You will, because that's how you keep your daddy safe." Arya walked forward slowly, the children beside her. She could see Daniel preparing to move, his whole body coiled like a spring. The other men had their attention divided. "That's far enough," Kozlov said. "Children, come here. Run." Arya shouted, then threw herself sideways. Everything happened at once. Daniel moved like lightning, his fist connecting with the nearest man's jaw. His security team burst through the doors. Arya hit the ground hard, scrambling toward the children who were frozen in terror. "Go! Now!" she signed desperately. Oliver grabbed his sister's hand and they ran, disappearing toward Daniel's office as chaos erupted around them. Arya tried to follow, but someone grabbed her ankle, dragging her back. She kicked and screamed, fighting with everything she had. "Let her go!" Daniel's voice cut through the noise, deadly and cold. "Or what, Reed?" "You'll." The punch Daniel threw was savage, fueled by fear and rage. Kozlov went down hard and didn't get up. "Anyone else?" Daniel asked quietly, looking at the other men. Nobody moved. Within minutes, Kozlov and his men were being dragged out by Daniel's security. The house was secure, but Arya was shaking so hard she couldn't stand. Daniel pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "You're okay. I've got you." "The children," she gasped. "Are they safe?" Samuel's checking the panic room now. A moment later, Samuel appeared with 2 terrified but unharmed children. They ran to Arya and Daniel, who caught them both, holding on like they'd never let go. And in that moment, covered in fear and relief, something shifted between Daniel and Arya. They'd become a family in the truest sense. And neither of them was letting go. The house felt different after that day. Safer, somehow, but also more fragile. Daniel doubled the security, but Arya knew that wasn't what had really changed. What changed was that they'd all faced the worst possible scenario and survived it together. Late that night, after the children were finally asleep, Daniel found Arya sitting in the garden. The London sky was dark, but the garden lights cast everything in a soft glow. "Can't sleep?" he asked, sitting beside her on the bench. "Every time I close my eyes, I see it all again." Arya's voice was quiet. "I keep thinking, what if I'd made the wrong choice? What if the children had been hurt because of me? You saved them." Daniel's voice was fierce. "You were incredibly brave." "I was terrified." "Bravery isn't the absence of fear, Arya. It's doing what needs to be done despite the fear." He paused, his hand finding hers in the darkness. "You protected my children like they were your own." Arya felt tears prick her eyes. "They feel like my own." The confession hung in the air between them. Daniel's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, a gesture so gentle it made her heart ache. "Can I tell you something?" he asked quietly. "Of course. When I saw Kozlov's man grab you, when I saw that gun pointed at your head, something in me just snapped." His voice was rough with emotion. "In that moment, I wasn't thinking about business or strategy or consequences. I was thinking that I couldn't lose you. That my children couldn't lose you. That I couldn't lose you. Arya's breath caught. Daniel, I know it's too soon. I know we've only known each other a few weeks. But Arya, somewhere between watching you teach my children to believe in themselves again and seeing you risk your life to protect them, I fell in love with you. The words hung in the garden air, beautiful and terrifying. You don't have to say anything, Daniel continued quickly. I just needed you to know. Needed you to understand why I'm going to do everything in my power to keep you safe. Why I'm never going to let anyone threaten you or the children again. Arya turned to face him, her dark eyes shining with unshed tears. Do you want to know what I was thinking when that gun was pointed at me? Daniel's jaw tightened, but he nodded. I was thinking that I couldn't leave those children. That they'd already lost so much. Their mother, their connection to their father, their voice in the world. I was thinking that I'd just found something I'd been searching for my whole life, without even knowing it. She took a shaky breath. A family. A purpose. You. Arya. I love you too, Daniel. I think I started falling for you that first night at the restaurant when you looked at your children like they were your whole world. When you were willing to learn a new language just to hear them. When you fought like a lion to protect them. Daniel's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing away a tear that had escaped. I don't deserve you. That's not your choice to make. Arya smiled through her tears. Besides, those children need both of us. You're learning to hear them, and I'm learning to be strong for them. Together, we're what they need. Together, Daniel repeated, testing the word. Then he leaned in and kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Arya laughed softly. The children are going to be impossible about this. They've been signing about it for days. What have they been saying? Oliver thinks you make moon eyes at me during lessons. Sophie has been planning our wedding since week 2. Daniel groaned, but he was smiling. They're 7. How do they even know about these things? They're very observant. And very hopeful. Arya's expression grew serious. Daniel, they asked me yesterday if I was going to be their mama. What did you tell them? I told them we'd have to see. That these things take time. She paused. But I wanted to say yes. I wanted to tell them that I already love them like they're mine. Daniel pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. Marry me. Arya pulled back, her eyes wide. What? Marry me. Daniel said it again, more firmly this time. I know it's fast. I know people will think we're crazy. But Arya, I've spent 7 years being half alive, going through the motions of being a father without knowing how to connect. You've given me my children back. You've given me a reason to come home, to learn, to be better. You've given me love when I thought I'd never feel it again. Daniel, we've only known each other 3 weeks. I built a business empire by trusting my instincts, by knowing when something was right. His blue eyes held hers intently. This is right, Arya. You meet Oliver, Sophie. We're right. Arya thought about her brother Miguel, about all the dreams that had died with him. About the years she'd spent just surviving, working double shifts, too tired and heartbroken to imagine a future beyond the next rent payment. And then she thought about Oliver's laugh when Daniel successfully signed a joke. About Sophie's artwork that now covered the refrigerator. About bedtime stories in sign language and flour-covered breakfast attempts. And this man who'd somehow become her whole world in 3 short weeks. Ask me properly, she whispered. Daniel slid off the bench and knelt before her in the garden, taking both her hands in his. Arya Santos, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, a mother to my children, my partner in everything? Will you help me build something beautiful and real and lasting? Arya felt tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. Daniel stood and kissed her again, and this time it felt like a promise, like a beginning, like coming home. From an upstairs window, 2 small faces watched with matching grins before scampering back to bed, already planning what they'd sign to their new mama in the morning. 6 months later, Arya stood in front of a mirror in a simple white dress, hardly recognizing the woman staring back at her. The girl who'd been a struggling waitress felt like a distant memory. This woman, this bride, was someone new. Someone loved. Someone home. You look beautiful, Mama. Sophie's small hands moved gracefully. The 7-year-old had become remarkably expressive, her confidence growing daily. The most beautiful, Oliver added, carefully adjusting his little suit jacket. Daddy's going to cry when he sees you. Arya laughed, signing back. Your daddy doesn't cry. He cried last week when we told him we love him in sign language for the first time without you translating. Sophie pointed out with 7-year-old logic. It was true. Daniel had come so far in 6 months. He wasn't perfect yet. His signings sometimes got tangled up when he was excited, and he still needed Arya to translate complicated conversations. But he could have real discussions with his children now. He knew when Oliver was worried about school. He understood when Sophie wanted to show him her artwork. He could say, "I love you, and I'm proud of you, and tell me about your day," without help. The small ceremony was held in the garden of their home. Arya had insisted on keeping it simple, just close friends and family. She walked down a path lined with flowers, her eyes finding Daniel immediately. He stood under an arch covered in white roses, wearing a dark suit that made his blue eyes even more striking. But it was his expression that made her breath catch, pure love, pure joy, pure certainty. Oliver and Sophie walked ahead of her, carefully carrying small baskets of flower petals, signing to each other excitedly. When they reached Daniel, both children took their positions beside him, their faces glowing with happiness. The ceremony was short. The officiant spoke the traditional words, but halfway through, Daniel did something unexpected. He began to sign his vows as he spoke them aloud. "Arya," he said, his hands moving with the words, "you came into my life like light breaking through darkness. You gave voice to my children when I couldn't. You gave hope to me when I'd stopped believing in it. You taught me that strength isn't about control, it's about connection. I promise to spend every day learning to be the man you deserve, the father our children need, and the partner who stands beside you through everything." By the time he finished, Arya was crying. She took his hands, signing as she spoke her own vows. "Daniel, you showed me that family isn't just about blood. It's about showing up, about never giving up, about learning to listen even when it's hard. You gave me back the purpose I lost when I lost my brother. You gave me 2 beautiful children who've taught me what unconditional love really means. I promise to stand beside you, to help you hear the voices that matter most, and to build a life with you that's filled with laughter and understanding and love. I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant said with a smile. Daniel's kiss was gentle and reverent, full of promises for their future. Behind them, Oliver and Sophie cheered, Sophie's voice clear and confident, Oliver's hands moving in enthusiastic signs. The reception was small and perfect. Arya watched Daniel teaching Maria, the housekeeper, basic sign language while the children supervised with serious expressions. She saw Samuel, Daniel's head of security, practicing the alphabet with Sophie, who corrected his hand positions with patient determination. Happy. Daniel appeared beside her, his arms slipping around her waist. "Terrifyingly happy," Arya admitted. "Is that normal? I think when happiness is this big, it's natural to be a little scared of losing it." He pulled her closer. "But we're not going to lose it, Arya. We're going to protect it with everything we have." Oliver tugged on Daniel's jacket, signing quickly. "Daddy, can we tell everyone the surprise now?" "What surprise?" Arya asked, looking between her new husband and stepchildren suspiciously. Daniel knelt down to the children's level. "Should we tell Mama?" Both children nodded enthusiastically. "We're going to the seaside," Sophie signed excitedly. "For 2 whole weeks. Just our family. We've been planning it for a month," Oliver added. "We wanted to surprise you." Arya felt her eyes fill with tears again. "You've been planning a family vacation?" "The children insisted," Daniel said, standing and pulling her close again. "They said that every real family needs a vacation together. And we're a real family now," Sophie signed matter-of-factly. "You're our mama, Daddy can talk to us, and we're all together forever." "Forever and always," Oliver added. Arya looked around at the small celebration, at the children who'd become hers, at the man who'd taught her to hope again, at the life they'd built from broken pieces and brave choices. "Forever and always," she signed back, her heart so full it ached. As the sun set over London that evening, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, the Reed family stood together in their garden. Daniel's business empire still existed, but it no longer defined him. He was a husband first, a father second, and everything else came after. The children had taught them all that love wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up every day, about learning to listen with your heart, not just your ears, about never giving up on the people who matter most. Arya's hands had given the children a voice, but their hearts had given her a home. "I love our family," Sophie signed, her small hands moving with confidence and joy. "Me too," Oliver added. "We're perfect together." Daniel looked at his wife, his children, his completed world, and signed the words that had become their family motto. "Yes, we're perfect together." And in that moment, standing in their garden with the people they loved most, they all believed it. Because sometimes the most beautiful stories begin with the bravest choices. With a waitress who dared to sign to forgotten children. With a father who dared to learn a new language. With a family who dared to love despite the risks. And sometimes, just sometimes, those brave choices lead to happy endings that last forever.